Hello, fabulous scholars. So, in our read aloud book, it turns out that the frost giants have Thor's hammer. They tricked Loki into giving it to them, and then punished Loki and Thor and Odin by turning them into animals. And the problem with gods being animals is they start to act more and more like those animals. And they need to get the hammer back, but there's a whole bunch of problems. And Odd just says, tomorrow we'll go to Asgard. We'll figure it out. And then he went back to sleep. And so that's where we are. Now, if you're kind of thinking, this sounds like a tale that you shared with us earlier this year, Ms. Lund. It is, scholars. It's based off that myth, but let's see if anything different happens. Already, just having Odd in the story makes it a little bit different. Makes it a little odd. Okay, enough of the puns. Chapter 4, Making Rainbows. What's that you've got there? Asked the fox. It's a lump of wood, said Odd. My father began to carve it into something years ago, and he left it here, but he never came back to finish it. What was it going to be? I don't know, admitted Odd. My father used to say that the carving was in the wood already. You just had to find out what the wood wanted to be, and then take your knife and remove everything that wasn't that. The fox seemed unimpressed. Odd was riding the bear's back. The fox trotted along beside them. High above them, the eagle rode the winds. The sun shone in a cloudless blue sky, and it was colder than it had been when there was cloud cover. They were heading toward higher ground along a rocky ridge, following a frozen river. The wind hurt Odd's face and ears. Scholars, have you ever felt like that when the wind has been so cold it makes your skin hurt? Yeah. This won't work, said the bear gloomily. I mean, whatever it is, it won't work. Odd said nothing. You're smiling, aren't you? Said the bear. I can tell. The thing was this. You got to Asgard, the place the gods came from, by crossing the Rainbow Bridge, which was called Bifrost. If you were a god, you simply wiggled your fingers and a rainbow appeared and you walked across it. Easy, or so the fox said, and the bear morosely, that means kind of sadly, agreed. Or at least it was easy until you didn't have fingers, right? They've got paws or wings, which they didn't. Still, even if you didn't have fingers, Loki pointed out, you could normally still find a rainbow and use it. Rainbows turned up after it rained, didn't they? Well, they didn't in midwinter. Odd thought about it. He thought about the way rainbows appeared on rainy days when the sun came out. I think, said the bear, as a responsible adult, I should point a few things out. Talk is free, Odd said, but the wise man chooses when to spend his words. It was something his father used to say. I just thought I should point out that we are wasting our time. We don't have any way of getting to the Rainbow Bridge. And if by some miracle we summon it, look at us. We're animals and you can barely walk. We can't defeat frost giants. The whole thing is hopeless. He's right, said the fox. If it's hopeless, said Odd, why are you coming with me? Good question. The animals said nothing. The morning sun sparkled up at them from the snow, dazzling Odd and making him squint. Nothing better to do, said the bear after a while. Up here, said Odd. He clung tightly to the bear's fur as they clambered up the side of a steep hill. They could see the mountains beyond. Stop, said Odd. The waterfall was one of his favorite places in the world. From spring until midwinter, it ran high and fast before it crashed down almost 100 feet into the valley beneath, where it had carved out a rocky basin. In the high summer, when the sun barely set, the villagers would come out to the waterfall and splash around in the basin pool, letting water tumble over their heads. Now the waterfall was frozen, and ice ran from the crags down to the basin in twisted ropes and clear icicles. It's a waterfall, said Odd. I used to come here, and when the water came down and the sun was shining brightly, you could see a rainbow, like a huge circle all around the waterfall. No water, said the fox. No water, no rainbow. There's water, said Odd, but it's ice. He took the axe from his belt, pushed his crutch beneath his arm as he got down from the bear's back, and walked over to the ice until he stood before the frozen waterfall. He used the crutch to hold himself in position as best he could, and then he began to swing the axe. The noise of the blade hitting the thick icicle cracked off the hills around them, making echoes that sounded as if an entire army of men was hammering on the ice. There was a crash, and an icicle as large as Odd smashed down to the surface of the frozen pool. Clever, said the bear in a voice that made it clear he didn't think it was clever at all. You broke it. Yes, said Odd. He inspected the shards of ice on the ground, picked up the biggest, most cleanly broken piece he could find, and then took it to the side of the frozen pool and put it on a rock and stared at it. It's a lump of ice, said the fox, if you ask me. Yes, said Odd. I think the rainbows are imprisoned, or stuck in, the ice when the water freezes. It's not really true, scholars, but think about other ways that you can make rainbows, right? Not just water, but also with a prism. So glass or frozen water, when the light shines through it, can still make a rainbow. Super excited, I better keep reading. The boy took out his knife and began to trace outlines on the ice block with the blade, going back and forth with it, scoring it as best he could. The eagle circled high above them, invisible in the midwinter sun. He's been up there a long time, said the bear. Do you think he's looking for something? The fox said, I worry about him. It must be hard to be an eagle. He could get lost in there. When I was a horse. A mare, you mean, said the bear with a grunt. The fox tossed its head and walked away. Odd put his knife down and took out his axe once more. I've seen rainbows in the snow sometimes, said Odd, loud enough for the fox to hear, and on the side of buildings when the sun shone through the icicles. And then I thought, ice is only water, so it must have rainbows in it too. When the water freezes, the rainbows are trapped in it, like fish in a shallow pool, and the sunlight sets them free. Again, not quite how rainbows are made, scholars, but I can see how Odd thinks that. Odd knelt in the frozen pool. He hit the big lump of ice with his axe. This did nothing. The axe just glanced off the ice and nearly cut into his leg. Do that again and you'll break the axe, said the fox. Hold on. He nosed about the bank of the frozen pool for several minutes. Then he began scrabbling in the snow. Here, he said, this is what you need. We'll find out what it is next time, scholars. Bye.